People love to argue about money like it's a scoreboard. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you handed every asset on Earth to everyone equally, the rich would likely find a way back to being rich, and the poor would likely find themselves poor again. Not because the numbers magically rearrange themselves overnight, because people don't just carry money, they carry patterns, they carry beliefs, they carry habits so automatic they don't even notice they're running the program. And that's the hidden self of this topic. The split isn't in the wallet. The split is in the mind that decides what time means, what work means, what risk means, and what opportunity is allowed to become. So today, we're going to talk about a story that keeps showing up in Jewish wisdom traditions and why it lands like a punch to the stomach when you finally stop romanticizing it. A fable about two men, Brown and Jeff, and a bridge, a fable about shortcuts, delayed rewards, and the kind of thinking that turns effort into wealth or effort into exhaustion. Because if you're stuck, it's rarely because you lack work. It's usually because you're working inside a logic that cannot produce freedom. You can't brute force your way out of a mindset that was built to keep you predictable. Let's start with the famous premise. Imagine the whole world's wealth gets divided evenly. Every person wakes up with the same stack of resources, the same buying power, the same financial runway. It sounds fair? It sounds like a cure, but fairness is not the same thing as transformation. People can have equal assets and still behave like the assets are temporary. They can still spend like time will always be on standby. They can still treat money like relief, not like leverage. They can still chase immediate comfort because their nervous system learned long ago that discomfort is danger. This is why that famous reasoning says the cycle would repeat. The rich would recreate wealth. The poor would recreate poverty. Not by magic, by psychology. And psychology is never loud. It's quiet. It lives in decisions you make while you think you're being rational. In the story, a village leader launches a project to reduce poverty. They repair a bridge and upgrade roads. The community gets a chance to earn, rebuild, and benefit. Two workers are offered a choice. Jeff gets the easy path first. He can join the hands-on labor right away, using tools, earning quickly. He doesn't need to study. He doesn't need to imagine. He doesn't need to be patient. He gets instant wages and instant recognition from people who mistake busyness for intelligence. Brown gets a harder choice. He can learn, research, and study a book that teaches how to build wealth sustainably. He delays gratification. He delays income. He delays the dopamine hit of doing something and seeing it pay off immediately. At the start, Jeff looks like the winner. People can't see delayed thinking. They can only see visible effort, so they praise Jeff's output. They applaud the way he shows up, the way he grips the job with both hands, the way he seems productive. Brown is criticized for being slow. In many communities, the person who doesn't sprint is treated like a liability. Their caution gets interpreted as incompetence. Their patience gets interpreted as laziness. And here's what the hidden self understands. Social pressure is often a weapon designed to keep you predictable. The crowd loves the person who conforms to the group's timeline. The crowd calls it realistic when you chase money today. The crowd calls it naive when you chase skill and strategy for tomorrow. Jeff starts working on the bridge. For a while, it feels good. He earns, he buys, he improves his life in visible ways. A home, maybe. Something tangible that makes his relatives respect him. Something that proves to him, in the mirror, that he's not falling behind. But then the project ends. And this is the part most people skip because it's painful. Jeff's income is not attached to a system that continues when the labor ends. His wealth is attached to the existence of a job. When the bridge is finished, the job shuts down. He doesn't have a replacement engine. He doesn't have a long-term structure. He has memory and a habit. So what does a habit do when the paycheck stops? It panics, it reaches for relief, it spends what it already has, because spending feels like control when you're afraid. Jeff realizes too late that he confused velocity with direction. He moved fast, but he didn't build a foundation. He treated money like a reward for effort, not like capital that can generate more effort. After 5 months, the bridge is completed. Jeff's income vanishes. His money disappears even faster because he built his lifestyle around short-term reinforcement. The spending becomes a way to soothe shame because the mind doesn't want to admit it made a structural mistake. He's exhausted. not because he worked hard, but because he's stuck in the kind of work where the only ladder is the next job. Brown, meanwhile, gets to be criticized for longer. He's mocked for not earning while Jeff earns, but he's building something else. While others are watching progress on the bridge, Brown is watching the consequence of the bridge. He thinks one step beyond completion. 2 kilometers from the finished bridge, he builds a gas station. People traveling across the bridge need fuel. The roads feed movement. The bridge creates predictable flow. Brown doesn't gamble on random luck. He attaches his future income to a permanent change in infrastructure. He doesn't have to start over after the project ends. The project creates demand that continues. His asset is in the path of repeatable human behavior, and that's the hidden mechanism. Wealth is usually not a result of working more. It's a result of designing for continuity. Brown invests time when everyone else invests effort. He accepts delayed gratification. He pays an upfront price in discipline. Then he receives long-term returns from something that doesn't require his daily labor to keep producing. People want a fairy tale where the poor become rich instantly by trying harder. But the truth is uglier and more honest. Trying harder without strategy just produces faster burnout. The story about Brown and Jeff sounds like money advice, but it's really identity advice. Jeff's identity is built on immediate proof. He needs his competence confirmed in the moment. He wants to feel ahead. He wants to see progress that the village can praise. Brown's identity is built on delayed proof. He can handle being misunderstood long enough to become effective later. He doesn't need public validation to keep going. This is why the wealthy often look emotionally different. They don't just have money, they have a relationship with time that the rest of society fails to develop. Now let's go deeper, because the real danger is when this mindset gets replaced with a new illusion. You might hear the story and say, "So I just need to be like Brown. I need long-term thinking." Good, but that's not enough. The more important question is why Jeff couldn't stay Brown for long. It's not intelligence. Plenty of people have enough intelligence. They also have enough education, enough access to information, enough opportunity to learn. What's missing is a psychological tolerance for uncertainty. Jeff is not just choosing work. He's choosing certainty. He's choosing the feeling of control. He's choosing the dopamine of a paycheck. He's choosing to avoid the emotional discomfort of waiting, not knowing, and being judged. That's the hidden self. Your brain will sacrifice your future just to reduce discomfort today, unless you train it otherwise. And if you're being honest, you already know you do this. How many times have you chased instant relief and called it necessary? How many times have you bought something to calm yourself after stress, then blamed the system when the relief didn't last? How many times have you filled evenings with distraction because sitting still with your own thoughts feels like a threat? The rich and the poor don't just differ in money, they differ in the way they spend their unowned asset. Time. Time is fair. Time is the only asset everyone gets the same way. Nobody gets extra hours. Nobody gets slower clocks when they're struggling. Time doesn't reward effort. Time just passes. So the only difference is what you do with the hours you pretend are endless. The poor often treat time like an enemy they need to get through. They want to sleep, they want to numb out, they want to escape the feeling of being behind. After work, they collapse into entertainment that feels like rest but isn't restorative. They watch, they scroll, they consume other people's lives like it will substitute for their own. They play games, they watch videos, they fill silence with noise, and then they wake up again, trapped in the next shift. And the pattern continues, not because they're lazy, but because their nervous system learned that discomfort must be avoided, and their schedule is built to keep them away from the thoughts that demand change. Meanwhile, the rich treat time as something they must convert. They don't see hours as free, they see hours as a finite resource that must be invested. When they have spare time, they study. They build skills, they improve health, they take relationships seriously, because relationships can be networks of opportunity or networks of limitation depending on what you feed them. They don't always feel like doing it, they do it anyway. That's the difference between discipline and desire. This is where people get defensive. They say, "But I'm tired. I work hard." Sure, everyone is tired. The world doesn't run on motivation. The brutal truth is that tiredness is not a moral failure. It's just the starting line. The question is what you do next. Do you use tiredness as permission to waste the hours you control? Or do you use tiredness as evidence that you need a system, not fantasies? Because here's the thing, work is not the whole story. Your job can be exhausting, but your after work choices are where the wealth gap is built. Two people can work the same 8 hours. Two people can face the same commute and the same boss and the same paycheck. Then one person uses the remaining hours to build long-term capacity and the other person uses them to numb out. 5 years later, the gap isn't only money, it's competence, it's health, it's confidence, it's social capital, it's credibility. And credibility is a form of wealth people don't talk about. Credibility is what gets you better opportunities without begging for them. Credibility is what makes other people trust you with bigger tasks. Now let's talk about work itself, because attitudes toward work reveal the hidden self more than any bank statement. The poor often see work as a cage. Work is something they endure to buy survival. Their paycheck is treated like a lifeline, not like a resource to reshape. So they do the minimum required to avoid punishment. They don't ask for stretch assignments. They don't invest in training that might increase their earning power. Why would they? In their mind, work is temporary. Work is just how you get money to survive, not how you become someone valuable. This attitude is not born from ignorance, it's born from learned helplessness. If your past taught you that effort doesn't change outcomes, you stop expecting the future to reward you. Your mind becomes protective. It reduces risk by reducing hope. Then hope becomes expensive, so you avoid expensive hopes. And then you tell yourself a story. That's just how things are. It's not for people like me. I'm not the type. This is where the hidden self lies. It convinces you that limitation is identity when it's actually conditioning. The rich see work differently, not necessarily because they love labor. They often don't love it either. They see work as a platform. To them, work is a place where they can create value that outlives their shift. They look for leverage, skills that translate, networks that expand, and projects that build a track record. They take ownership. They ask questions. They move sideways and upwards. They treat their job as training for an income engine, not as an end state. They also understand something most people don't want to face. The goal isn't money. The goal is optionality. Optionality is the ability to choose. It's the ability to switch jobs without panic. It's the ability to start something without begging. It's the ability to say no without punishment. Money can buy optionality, but optionality is built through skills, relationships, health, and assets. This is why people who chase comfort without building optionality end up trapped in choices that make them feel small. Now let's get to the final core, how people use money when they finally have it. The poor often treat money as a finish line. When they get money, they spend it immediately to reduce tension. They buy to feel safe. They buy to feel respected. They buy to feel like they belong. And it's not always stupidity. It's often emotional urgency. If you've grown up feeling deprived, every dollar can feel like evidence that your life is finally changing. So you rush to enjoy it. You rush to prove you're not powerless anymore. You buy the electronics. You buy the new clothes. You upgrade the lifestyle as a way to silence the old fear that you'll go back to being nothing. But when you spend everything, you remove the possibility of compounding. Compounding requires restraint. Compounding requires the willingness to watch money multiply